The storm clouds hung low over the highway, an ominous omen that mirrored the turmoil brewing in Lillian Carter's chest. The rhythmic thud of the windshield wipers did little to silence the pounding in her ears as she gripped the steering wheel tighter. She wasn't supposed to be here. At precisely 3 p.m., she should have been sitting in a sleek, glass-walled office across town, sipping overpriced green tea and discussing market trends with a client. But instead, she had cancelled her appointment with a feeble excuse, silenced her phone, and driven 2 hours north to the country house. To his country house. Mark had said he was swamped at work, yet she had noticed the smallest inconsistency, a dinner receipt from the inn near the house, dated last night. He hadn't mentioned a trip. And Mark never dined alone. A deep, unsettling instinct had wrapped around her ribs like a vice, tightening with each passing mile. The house had always been their retreat, a quiet escape from the noise of city life. But now, as she rolled past the iron gates and up the gravel driveway, it felt like an entirely different place. A place of secrets. She cut the engine and sat in silence for a moment, her breath fogging up the cold glass of the windshield. The house stood dark and still against the gray sky. But she wasn't deceived. She had seen another car parked just beyond the trees. Sliding out of the driver's seat, Lillian moved with cautious, deliberate steps, her heels sinking into the damp earth. The house loomed ahead, its stone facade betraying nothing, its windows like empty eyes watching her approach. The back porch creaked beneath her weight as she ascended the steps, pressing herself close to the wall. She peered through the nearest window, her pulse hammering. The living room was empty, but the fireplace crackled with fresh embers. Someone was here. She edged along the wall to another window, this one facing the dimly lit study. Mark's study. A space filled with dark mahogany furniture, old books, and an air of solitude. But tonight, it was anything but solitary. There he was. Mark stood near his desk, his back to her. His posture was relaxed, too much so, as if the weight of deception had been lifted in her absence. And he was not alone. A woman sat perched on the edge of the desk, long legs crossed, an expensive silk blouse draped off one shoulder. She leaned toward him, whispering something that made him chuckle. Lillian felt her world shift beneath her feet. It was one thing to suspect. Another to see. Her fingers trembled against the windowpane as she took in the intimacy of their stance, the way Mark's hand grazed the woman's knee, the slow tilt of his head as he leaned in, close, too close. The betrayal slammed into her chest like a physical blow. Rage burned in her veins, but she didn't move. Not yet. Instead, she watched. She needed to see how far this would go. And then, Mark did something that made her blood run cold. He reached into the desk drawer and pulled out a sleek, black envelope. He handed it to the woman, who flipped it open, scanned the contents, and smiled. Lillian's breath hitched. That envelope. She had seen it before, tucked away in their safe. It contained something valuable, something secret. And Mark had just handed it to her. This was no ordinary affair. This was something much, much worse. Lillian's fingers curled into a fist. She wasn't leaving. Not yet. Because whatever was happening inside that house, whatever deception Mark was entangled in, she wasn't just a scorned wife anymore. She was about to become something else entirely. A woman on a mission. Lillian pressed her back against the cold stone wall, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The night air bit at her exposed skin, but she barely noticed. Her mind was spinning, replaying the scene inside Mark's study, the woman, the envelope, the undeniable intimacy. She could handle an affair. She could handle betrayal. But this? This was something different. Mark wasn't just being unfaithful. He was handing over something valuable, something secret, and he had done it with the ease of a man who had done it before. Her fingers itched to storm inside, to demand answers, to shatter the fragile illusion of trust that had already cracked beyond repair. But she held herself back. charging in blind wouldn't get her what she needed. Answers. Carefully, she crept along the side of the house, moving toward the back door. It was locked, as expected, but the window just beside it wasn't fully latched. Mark had never been careful about details like that. With a deep breath, she pushed it open just enough to slip inside, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain they would hear it. The warmth of the house engulfed her, the scent of burning wood and expensive cologne filling her nose. Footsteps echoed from the study, soft, deliberate. She ducked into the shadows of the hallway, pressing herself against the wall just as Mark's voice drifted through the open door. "This should cover everything," he was saying. "I don't want any loose ends." The woman laughed softly. "You think money erases a problem?" "You said this would be simple," Mark countered, his voice low, tense. "We agreed, no complications." Lillian's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a casual meeting. It was a transaction. She risked a glance through the doorway. The woman was holding the envelope with a smirk, her fingers drumming against its edge. She had an air of control, an effortless confidence that made Lillian's skin crawl. "Relax," the woman said smoothly. "I'm not your problem." "She is." Lillian barely suppressed a gasp. She. They were talking about her. Every nerve in her body screamed at her to run, but she forced herself to stay still. She needed to know everything. Mark exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "I just need this to be over." The woman stood, stepping closer, trailing a manicured finger down his chest. "Then let me handle it." Lillian's pulse spiked. Handle it? This wasn't just about another woman. It wasn't just about betrayal. It was about eliminating her. A cold sweat broke out along her spine. The reality of what she had stumbled into settled over her like a suffocating weight. Mark wanted her gone. And this woman, whoever she was going to make sure it happened. The floor creaked under her shifting weight, and in an instant, Mark's head snapped toward the hallway. Lillian's heart leapt into her throat. Silence stretched between them like a drawn blade. "Did you hear that?" the woman asked. Lillian didn't wait for an answer. She turned and ran. Her feet barely touched the ground as she sprinted for the back door, shoving it open and throwing herself outside into the freezing night. The wind howled through the trees, but all she could hear was her own ragged breathing. Behind her, she heard the study door swing open. "Who's there?" Mark's voice rang out, sharp with suspicion. Lillian ducked behind the car, her pulse hammering in her throat. She needed to leave. She needed to disappear before Mark realized it had been her. As she fumbled with her car keys, her mind reeled with the weight of the revelation. Mark wasn't just cheating. He was planning something far worse. And now, she had something she wasn't supposed to have. The truth. But the real question was, what was she going to do with it? Lillian's hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white under the dim glow of the dashboard. The night stretched before her in a blur of winding roads and flickering headlights, but her mind was sharper than ever. She had come here seeking proof of an affair. Instead, she had uncovered something deeper, something dangerous. Mark wasn't just betraying her. He was hiding something. And the woman in his study wasn't just a mistress. She was a partner in something secret. Something worth lying for. Something worth destroying their marriage for. Lillian's foot eased off the gas as she reached the outskirts of town. She couldn't go home, not yet. She needed answers first. She needed to know exactly what Mark had done before she confronted him. She pulled into the parking lot of a quiet roadside diner, the neon sign buzzing faintly above her. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee and fried food clung to the air. It was nearly empty, save for a trucker nursing a plate of eggs in the corner. Lillian slid into a booth near the window and pulled out her phone. She hesitated. Calling Mark now would be reckless. He'd deny everything, twist the truth until she questioned herself. No, she needed a different approach. Her thoughts raced back to the envelope. The way the woman had smirked as she took it. That envelope meant something. Digging through her bag, she retrieved a small notepad and scribbled down what she knew. Mark lied about his whereabouts. The woman is not just an affair. The envelope contains something important. But what? A memory surfaced. 2 months ago, Mark had been restless, distracted. His law firm had taken on a high-profile client, and he'd been buried in paperwork, barely speaking at home. She hadn't thought much of it at the time, until now. Lillian opened her browser and searched for recent legal cases Mark had been involved in. A name popped up. David Langford. A wealthy investor accused of fraud, millions of dollars gone missing. Mark's firm had represented him. The case had ended abruptly, with Langford walking away free. It had raised eyebrows, but no one had proven anything. Her stomach tightened. Could the envelope contain something from that case? Evidence? Money? Her heart pounded as she considered the possibilities. If Mark had been involved in something illegal, it could ruin him. Maybe that's what the woman in the study was, a fixer, someone ensuring loose ends were tied. Lillian's phone buzzed. Mark. She stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. He knew. Maybe he'd seen her car. Maybe he'd sensed her presence. Or maybe he was just calling to maintain the lie. She let it ring. Then, with a deep breath, she typed a message. We need to talk. She hit send. The confrontation. By the time Lillian pulled into their driveway, the storm had arrived. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder rumbling in the distance. Mark was waiting in the living room, glass in hand, his expression unreadable. You weren't at your meeting, he said smoothly, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Where were you? Lillian tossed her wet coat onto the chair. Funny, she said. I was about to ask you the same thing. Mark's jaw tightened. Lillian. I went to the country house, she interrupted, stepping closer. I saw everything. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise? Guilt? Annoyance? She pressed forward. Who is she, Mark? And what did you give her? Mark exhaled sharply, setting down his drink. It's not what you think. Then explain it to me. A long silence stretched between them. Then, finally, she's an investigator. Lillian's stomach dropped. What? Mark ran a hand down his face. Langford. That case, he wasn't innocent. But there was no way to prove it. The firm made sure of that. Lillian's breath caught. So you knew he was guilty? Mark nodded, his gaze dark. And so does she. She was hired to find out how deep it goes. He hesitated. I helped her. Lillian's mind spun. You helped her? Then why all the secrecy? Mark rubbed his temples. Because if my firm finds out, I lose everything. Realization hit her like a wave. He wasn't trying to betray her, he was trying to protect himself. You're turning against your own firm, she whispered. Mark nodded. I had no choice. But if this goes public, I'll be ruined. Lillian studied him for a long moment. He looked tired. Worried. But was he telling the truth? She glanced toward the fireplace, where embers still glowed from earlier that evening. Her mind raced through everything she had seen. Could she trust him? After tonight, she wasn't sure. But one thing was certain, whatever Mark had done, whatever was in that envelope, it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. If you liked it, subscribe to the channel and enjoy these other amazing stories.